At L&M Fine Jewelry, we hand select our diamonds to give you the very best prices possible. Monty knows a great deal when he finds one. Find your great deal at L&M Fine Jewelry.
Your diamond destination.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Samuel Akem here, and I'm back with another one. We have officially hit college football season. We are officially talking about games that were played. It was a great weekend of college football. I am so excited. Montana State beat New Mexico. You got McNeese narrowly losing to Tarleton, almost came back. You had Norfolk State and FAMU. There was great football played this weekend. Georgia Tech, Florida State, obviously. Big weekend of college football. It was a great time. I'm very excited right now. Make sure you guys hit the like. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button right now. Right now. Hit the subscribe button right now. It's college football season. Montana State, Missouri State plays, or Montana, Missouri State plays this weekend. I will be there. I will be credentialed. It's going to be freaking exciting. We got the Grizzly Sports pregame, postgame, tailgate show. It's going to be exciting. We got a whole list of Big Sky teams playing this weekend. Some of them playing FBS opponents. I'd say a good number of them playing FBS opponents. Idaho, Oregon, Portland, Washington State, San Jose State, Sac State, UC Davis, Cal. There's a lot of football being played against some FBS opponents. Obviously, Montana State, New Mexico. We are going to be talking about all of it in today's video. So make sure you guys stay tuned in for the whole video. I got a great video for you guys today. I appreciate you guys always. As always, I appreciate you guys tapping in. We are going to get straight into the video. First things first. In our week 0 matchup, Big Sky team playing in a week 0 matchup this week, you had Montana State came back from down 17 in the fourth quarter and beat New Mexico in a thriller 35-31, their first FBS victory since they beat Colorado in 2006. It was a great game. The headliners in that game, Tommy Mellott, had a good game. You had Adam Jones, 17 carries, 167 yards, and a touchdown, averaged close to 10 yards a carry. And then you had Scottrey Humphrey, 19 carries, 140 yards, 1 touchdown. He was around like 7.4. It might have been closer to 8 yards a carry. He had the game-winning touchdown run. Adam Jones had a huge 93-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter that really put Montana State in position. It was on a drive where, they didn't have a lot of time to waste. I mean, honestly, the way this game finished is how it had to finish. Adam Jones scored with a little under 5 minutes to go in the game when they needed to have it. Then Tommy Mellott put together an amazing 2-minute drive to finish the game. Montana State really struggled early on in this game. They had 2 turnover touchdowns. I mean, and man, this is something that Houck used to talk about this a lot. The number one way to lose games is to give the other team the ball. That gets heightened when you give the team the ball and allow them to score. Montana State had not only 1, but 2 fumbles that were returned for touchdowns. I mean, if you look at that alone, you would think this team is supposed to lose. This just shows, I kept mentioning it in my Montana State versus New Mexico breakdown. Sean Rainey said on Twitter, winning teams find a way to win. Teams who know how to lose somehow, inevitably, one way or the other, find a way to lose. In New Mexico, the last 4 drives of the game, their last 4 offensive drives of the game, missed field goal. That's 6 points right there. Drop third down catch by number 15, one of their top receivers. Another drop third down catch by number 12. 4 drives straight, blunders, mistakes that easily could have kept them in the game. I mean, it's just unimaginable that they would do something of that nature to lose a game. It's crazy. They had a 17-point lead in the first quarter. Montana State rallied back, brought it back to 17-14. New Mexico scored right before the end of the half, making it a 24-14 ball game. Okay, they get the fumble touchdown early in the second half, making it a 17-point game again. Teams are trading back and forth. Nobody really gets anything going besides that turnover touchdown in the third quarter. Then you get Montana, Montana State went for it a couple downs on fourth down, was unsuccessful on that. Fourth quarter comes. They're down by 17. They just start driving the ball. One thing I did notice, and something that Colton Nuanez pointed out to me when we were texting during the game, is it felt like Montana State was trying to be something that they weren't. Montana State is the best, one of the best. They're the best rushing team in the Big Sky Conference. They're one of the best rushing teams in the country. Outside of South Dakota State, outside of North Dakota State, they might have averaged more rushing yards last year than South Dakota State. Maybe not, because South Dakota State beat up on a lot of teams. But religiously, year in and year out, they're one of the best rushing teams in the country every year. And on Saturday, at the beginning of the game, it seemed like they weren't leaning on their offensive line. They have the best. I mean, one guy does not make a whole offensive line, but they have one of the best, if not the best, offensive lineman in the country, and Marcus Wehr, and you saw that in that game. If you watch the game back, please go watch my breakdown. He was dominant. Their offensive line was dominant. Their tight ends were dominant. I talk about that in my breakdown as well. Oh my gosh, they were mauling guys. It was ridiculous. Another thing I noticed watching this Montana State-New Mexico game is when you look at, usually when you watch an FBS versus an FCS opponent, you look at the front seven and you're like, oh my gosh, that's where the difference is. Like, you look at Montana versus Washington when we played them in 2021, when we played them in 2017. You look at Montana versus Oregon when we played them in 2019. I'm only saying those because those are games that I can relate to. But think back to any time you've watched an FBS opponent versus an FCS opponent. The first thing you look at, the offensive line is usually bigger than the FCS opponent's defensive line, and the FBS opponent's defensive line is usually bigger than the FCS opponent's offensive line. The front seven always is a dead giveaway, the D-line and offensive line specifically. When I watched New Mexico and Montana State, they didn't look very different at all. They didn't look like Montana State was the same exact size as New Mexico. Now, I understand New Mexico brought in 60 new players. I understand New Mexico brought in a new coach. But, I mean, dang, man, they tried so hard to lose this game, and they did lose this game. Not that Montana State was 100% giving it away, but Montana State did not play 100% clean early on in the game. Obviously, the fumble return for a touchdown is something that hurts. Montana State gave up 3 sacks. 2 of them were fumbles returned for touchdowns. One of them was just one where Tommy Mellott kind of got some pressure in the pocket, tried to scramble around. But one thing I did notice about Montana State's offensive line is when they're run blocking, they're really good. They're one of the best in the country at run blocking. They get push up front. They get a ridiculous amount of push up front. They got some maulers up there with their tight ends and their running. They play a physical brand of football up front. When they're pass blocking, guys can get through. And that's just something I noticed. You guys can go watch the game back. You guys can go watch my breakdown. I talk about it in the breakdown. Guys are able to get pressure on Tommy Mellott in the pocket. Another thing I noticed, I don't know if you guys noticed this, Tommy Mellott had 9 carries for 30 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 3.3 yards a carry. One thing I noticed when watching the game was they weren't like last year when you watch Montana State, there was a concerted effort to get Tommy Mellott the ball on multiple occasions. Tommy was probably getting 15 to 20 carries a game last year. Don't quote me on that. It's probably less than that, but it felt like Tommy Mellott was running the ball a ton last year, and he was. If you talk to any Montana State fan during this offseason, we need to run Tommy Mellott less. That's the number one thing people are saying. He's obviously a difference maker. He's obviously one of the best players in the Big Sky Conference. He obviously is a big-time leader for Montana State. If you have him on the field, you have a better chance of winning. Not to say they shouldn't have won that game against North Dakota State, even when Tommy Mellott got hurt, because they should have. But when you have Tommy Mellott on the field, there's a much higher chance that your team is going to come out on top, especially when you talk about Montana State and that offense. I didn't feel like they were trying to run Tommy that much. It felt like that on the times when he was running, it was when he had no choice but to pull it, because I'm almost certain that most of their runs are a read option. He has the option to pull it. Why wouldn't you design that with Tommy Mellott? But it was a lot of inside zone they were running, a little bit of gap scheme, but you know, Tommy Mellott, it didn't seem like he like even on when he scored his touchdown, it seemed like it was a busted play. It seemed like the snap was, I can't remember if the snap, I think the snap was high. He wasn't able to hand it off to Adam Jones. Adam Jones ends up being his leading blocker. He gets around the left side of the line and ends up scoring a touchdown, tiptoeing down the sidelines. But like, it didn't seem like they were trying to run him a lot. And you guys, please comment on this in the comments, please, because I felt like they weren't really trying to run Tommy Mellott a lot during this game. And I was happy to see that, because I know how much fans were, you know, obviously the coaches aren't 100% listening to what fans think, but they understand that as well. Like, this is our best player. We would love to have him on the field healthy. And it seemed like You could tell that with the way the plays were being called. Still being very physical up front, still running the ball, still playing off the play action, still having Lanyata Alexander and Ty McCullough, their two top receivers of that game. I think Ty had close to 70 receiving yards, maybe a little over 70 receiving yards, and Lanyata had, I think, 58. But decent. That's what you expect from a Montana State team. They're going to run the ball, had 300 yards of rushing between two running backs, and then the rest is through the air, and the rest is Tommy Mellott. I mean, this game was amazing. The fact that Montana State came back and won this game absolutely amazing. It was a great sight to see. I wrote them off. I remember when they were down by 17. I was like, dang, 31-14. These guys down by 17. Like, this game is over. And then, I was in Houston this weekend, so I was watching it on my phone, keep staying tapped in. I can't remember what happened. We left somewhere, and I wasn't really, we left, and we were in between, making a transition from, the car to, we were going to this comedy show. There was, a transition period where I had turned it off. Next thing I know, it's a 31-24 ball game. Not even. It was 31-28 because then Adam Jones ran that touchdown in. I mean, it was just a crazy game. And then one thing I was really impressed about, the game is on the line. 2-minute drive. Literally, when the drive was starting, 1:59 on the clock. Tommy Mellott is on I think they were on their 11-yard line. 90 yards for the rest of your life. Quoting Tim Tebow, 90 yards for the rest of your life. What the hell do you want to do? What are we going to do? What do we want to be remembered by? How do we want to do? Tommy Mellott drives his team down the field. Ty McCullough makes a big catch after messing up early in the drive and busting on a play that they had ran earlier. He messed up. If you watch the breakdown, you see they ran the same exact route concept early in the game, and he ran a hitch. Dowler had ran a slot fade. Later on in the game, Dowler runs the slot fade. Ty McCullough runs a slant for some reason. Must have missed the call. Something must have happened. Either way, he made up for it in a big way. Tommy Mellott made a big time throw on third down in the red zone, hitting Ty McCullough low and away from the defensive back inside. Ty McCullough made a great catch. Next play, Scott Trey Humphrey runs it in with 10 seconds left on the clock. I mean, amazing. Amazing. I mean, just storybook type things. 17 points down in the fourth quarter to come back. If you would have bet the live line, I'm sure you would have made a nice chunk of change. I mean, amazing. What a great game. You guys, leave me a comment down below. What did you guys think about the Montana State New Mexico game? This week they play Utah Tech. They go to Utah to play Utah Tech. I don't know much what to expect from that game. Obviously, Utah Tech has not been good since they've moved up. I don't expect a lot out of them. I expect Montana State to roll them. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the game. But obviously, a couple of last points I want to make about this game. Montana State clearly had some first game jitters. That's what you expect out of any team to start the season. I'm sure we're going to see more of that this week in week 1. But I know Montana State's happy that they were able to get that over with early on in the season. First game jitters. My last question, and you guys leave your answer to this question in the comments. Was this bad New Mexico or good Montana State? I'm going to answer it, and then you guys can leave your comments down below. I personally think it was bad Montana State, or it was a little bit of both. It was definitely bad New Mexico. I'm not going to say it was good Montana State. I'm going to say Montana State they were good in the end. When they needed to be good, Montana State was good. But they struggled a lot. Turnovers, cannot have it. They were 0 for 3 on fourth down, and they still won this game with 2 turnovers. I mean, you look at some of the stats in this game, and you're like, how the heck did they win this game? And still, they found a way to win this game. Just freaking amazing. You guys leave me a comment what you thought about this. I definitely think it was that bad New Mexico. I mean, some of the mistakes they made in the game cannot happen. You got to make those catches. 2 wide open catches on third downs late in the game. 2 missed field goals late in the game. I think one was 40 yards. One was 35 yards. You got to hit one of those. And one thing I mentioned in the breakdown is I know Montana State was so happy. There were people in the stands oh my gosh, thank you. Finally, it's somebody else. For once, not even for once, because it's not like this is an ongoing problem for them. Definitely was a problem for them last year. But for once, it's somebody else having kicking struggles that benefit us. Last year, it was Montana State having the kicking struggles that benefited Idaho, that benefited North Dakota State. Finally, they're on the other side. Obviously, I don't think they really had to test their kickers out this game. They didn't kick any field goals throughout this game. So Still a question mark for Montana State. That will wait to be answered for another week. They went for it on 4th down. Maybe, and I'm gonna pose this other question. Did Montana State go for it on 4th down 3 times? Actually, one of the times they went for it was in their own side of the field late in the 4th quarter. Honestly, risky. I think that was like in the middle part of the 4th quarter. They're great that didn't come back to bite them. New Mexico, shame on them for not taking advantage of that. But I want to ask the question, like, do you guys think Montana State went for it on 4th down 3 times because of their kicking struggles from last year? Is there like PTSD with Coach Vegan and the kicking struggles from Montana State from last year? I don't know. That question is yet to be answered. But it was an amazing game. Montana State came out with the dub, 35-31. You guys let me know in the comments what you guys think about that, and we will move on. Okay, we're going to pivot a little bit from talking about some Big Sky football, and we're going to talk a little bit about the McNeese versus Tarleton game. Obviously, I have been somebody who has been tapped into wanting to watch this game. I mentioned how, obviously, I've been talking about all season how Clifton left Montana this offseason, was at Temple, ended up at McNeese. They played on ESPN2 to start the season. It was a really good game, and I'm not going to lie, I was doubting them. But Clifton did not play bad at all. Clifton actually had a pretty good game. He had 1 interception. It was on a tough interception, but he completed 70% of his passes, 14 for 20, 245 yards, 20 carries, 67 yards, average of 3.4 yards a carry. I mean, the man had 300 yards of offense and 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, a deep slot fade on one, or no, it was actually an outside receiver, outside fade on one of them, and then a slant where the receiver caught it after like 5 yards and took it to the house for maybe 40, 50 yards. I can't remember how long the touchdown was, but it was a really good game. They were down bad. They were down 26-7. For a lot of the second quarter and going into the third quarter, and their defense started to get some stops. Offense started to put some drives together somehow, some way. And this is how it was for Montana last year. Obviously, they were usually on the winning side. That's why they were 11-1 last year. 13-2 to finish the season, 11-1 or actually 10-1 to finish the regular season. Anyway, somehow, some way, Clifton finds a way to get his guys, to empower his guys, to give them confidence to where they're going to find a way to be close. They're going to find a way to be there when it comes down to it. That is exactly what happened today. The game was close when it came down to it. And somehow, some way, McNeese was right there with a chance to win it. And I wouldn't even put it on Clifton. He put his team in position to win. He put his team in position to win the game. They needed a field goal to tie it, and their kicker missed. Game over right there. I mean, I don't know what you want. Kayvon Britton, who I mentioned being one of the top 3 running backs in the country this year, 25 carries, 164 yards, no touchdowns, average 6.5 yards a carry. I mean, I don't know what else you want from your that's Tarleton. That's on Tarleton's side. Great performance from him. But I will say, Tarleton kind of stalled out in the second half. I think the game was 26-7 at half, if I remember correctly. Tarleton didn't score any other points in the second half. McNeese ended up with 23. The game finished off 26-23. I mean, Clifton did what he could. Obviously, a turnover, you don't want to see that. He fumbled the first drive of the game as well, so I didn't put that in there. What lost McNeese this game is they had 4 turnovers. If they didn't have 4 turnovers, who knows what the scoreboard looks like. But 1 interception, 3 fumbles. They still had an opportunity to win at the end of the game. So what does that say about Tarleton? They need to get some things figured out, because obviously they have one of the best running backs in the country. I just mentioned what his running stats were, but 4 turnovers is brutal. A fumble first drive of the game for Clifton that I don't think they scored with it. I can't remember if they scored on it. No. I think they ended up getting 3 off that turnover. But still, to fumble the first drive of the game, you can't have it. To throw an interception, I think it was in the second quarter, you can't have it. You got to play better when it matters most. I mean, but when it mattered, when they needed it, Clifton was on. Clifton was dialed in. So all props to Clifton. I was very impressed with the performance that you put on. Gotta stop the turnovers. You can't have the turnovers. The turnovers are going to kill you. But in terms of, showing up when the lights are the brightest, which is what he did last year, he did that for Tarleton, for McNeese, making the plays. Obviously, Tarleton, I mentioned that I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the United Athletic Conference. I think it's going to come down to Tarleton and University of Central Arkansas. might have to reassess that. I mean, I'm still stand by it, but Tarleton's got some work to do. You know, they didn't put up any points in the second half. That is a serious problem, man. Like, you got to put up points. You got to score. You got to find a way, and Tarleton was just stymied by McNeese's defense. Props to McNeese for standing up and being stout in that second half, but I think Tarleton's got to get some things figured out. I think McNeese, obviously, has got to take care of the ball, but all in all, you know, I don't know. It was a decent game, kind of slow, not really offensively charged until late in the game by McNeese. Tarleton offense really stalled late in the game, but it was a good game. They should have been it. I mean, their field goal kicker missed it, and that's the only reason we weren't talking about an overtime thriller. Who knows who would have... I honestly think McNeese would have came out and won in overtime, given how McNeese's offense was playing and their defense was playing against Tarleton, and given how Tarleton's offense was not getting anything done. I think we would have been talking about McNeese winning this game, maybe by a touchdown, maybe by 3, whatever, but I think McNeese would have won it. But they didn't, unfortunately. That game was about missed opportunities. Tarleton not turning the turnovers into TDs every time. That also hurt Tarleton. 4 turnovers. I think, I can't remember exactly. I know they got 3 off one of the turnovers. I don't think they didn't score touchdowns on all. You want to get touchdowns. I think some of the turnovers they didn't even score on. So it's like they didn't make the most of the turnovers, and McNeese missing a game time field goal to take it to overtime. Just brutal. Missed opportunities all around. Either way, it was a good game. It was thriller. It was a thriller all the way to the end. I think obviously Clifton is seeing that things are different at McNeese than they were at Montana. You know, I think the weapons that he had at his exposure at Montana were a little bit different. I think the play calling that he had at Montana was a little bit different. I think Coach Pease is probably one of the best play callers in the country. If I am biased, so take that with a grain of salt, please. I don't care. But, you know, we'll see how McNeese does in the Southland Conference. Obviously, that conference isn't, you know, they got Incarnate Word. They got Nichols State, who won the conference last year. I think those are the 2 top teams in the conference. Everybody else, I think it is what it is. But we will see what they have to do, what they're going to do next week. Obviously, we're mainly covering the Big Sky this year, but I wanted to tap into that McNeese game. You got the Big Sky newcomer of the year on that team from last year on that McNeese team. So something I was tapped into. Obviously, it was on ESPN2, so the world was watching. And I don't think Clifton disappointed. Obviously, there was a few turnovers, the fumble, and the interception. But besides that, I think he put on a good show. I think he played, honestly, comparable to how he played last year. I think he was asked to throw a little bit more this maybe not. I think he did what Clifton did last year. I think, honestly, he played a little better than he did last year because he was a really good rusher last year. I thought he was around 50 to 60% completion percentage for most of the year last year. And if you go look at the stats will back that up. He was around 50 to 60% completion percentage for most games last year. He threw 70% completion percentage last weekend. So, I mean, maybe he's been working in the offseason. Maybe things were just a little different down there. Who knows? It was a great game, but you guys let me know what you guys thought about the game in the comments, and I will move.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh,
yeah. Okay, some of my favorite performances from the weekend. Scott Ray Humphrey, 19 carries, 140 yards, a touchdown, 7.5 yards per carry, 7.4 to be exact, a game-winning touchdown run. He looked like a number 1 running back to me most of the game. Obviously, Adam Jones did what he did on that 93-yard touchdown run, but, you know, I think Scott Ray Humphrey established himself as one of the best running backs in the Big Sky Conference during this game. I had a friend text me and say about Adam Jones, he was like, Christian McCaffrey, and I was like, whoa, hang on. Adam Jones had 2 catches for 10 yards, but obviously he had 160 rushing yards. We can't just go out naming every running back Christian McCaffrey just because they're white. We got to understand what Christian McCaffrey did last year. Christian McCaffrey, the friend who texted me that also was white. I just want to point that out. But Christian McCaffrey, what he was in college was a passer, a catcher, catching passes out of the backfield. He also could run the ball very successfully. He did them both. I didn't see that from Adam Jones this week. Maybe that's in his bag. I would love to see it throughout the course of this season, and obviously I'm going to be tapped in to see if that's what he does. But, you know, If they're able to keep this up at Montana State, they have a two-headed monster. 167 rushing yards from Adam Jones, 140 from Scottrey Humphrey. Are you kidding me? What are we talking about? Neither of them had more than 20 carries. I mean, what are we talking about? They both averaged more than 7 yards a carry. What are we talking about? And then my other top performance, Adam Jones, 17 carries, 167 yards and a touchdown, 9.8 yards a carry. What? Obviously, that 90-yard rush had a lot to do with that, but are we kidding? 167 yards, 9.8 yards a carry, a touchdown. When I tell you that 93-yard touchdown by Adam Jones was very clutch, that touchdown was very, very clutch. They needed that. They had to get that. Like, if they didn't score right then, it would have looked very, very, very dire for them. It would have looked very dire for them. It would have got bad for them. So they needed that touchdown. Really good for him. And then my third top performance of the weekend was Kayvon Britton. 25 carries, 164 yards, 6.6 yards a carry. He did not get in the end zone, but he had a really, really good game. I stand by saying he will be one of the top 3 running backs in the country after the season, and he backed that up for me. 25 carries, 164 yards. Man showed up. He had, 8 more carries than Adam Jones and had 3 less yards, but obviously he didn't have a 93-yard touchdown. So, I mean, 3 good running back performances this weekend. Those are the 2 games, obviously, I watched and was super tapped into. I didn't watch Norfolk or FAMU. I didn't watch Delaware and Hawaii. So, if I'm missing somebody who had a really good performance, no, that was a tight end I think the tight end for Delaware State had a pretty solid game. No, that was the tight end for SMU. Never mind. Disregard that. If I'm missing any FCS performances, please let me know. But those are the 3 top performances I noticed. Obviously, I'm always having a keen eye for some receivers that are balling out. I think the receiver for Tarleton, I can't even remember his name right now, but I don't even want to mess up his number. I think his number was 83. Either way, there was a receiver for Tarleton. He looked nice. He didn't have a crazy stat line, but he looked very nice. I wanted him to have a better stat line because I wanted to talk about him today, but the stat line was not eye-popping enough for me to say it. Kayvon Britton, Scottrey Humphrey, Adam Jones, 3 really good running backs, 2 of them being in the Big Sky. Obviously, every yard from Scottrey Humphrey and Adam Jones contributed to them winning that game on Saturday. It was a great game. If you haven't go watch that game, I'm going to be breaking it down, so watch my breakdown. Don't even go watch the game. Just watch the breakdown. You'll learn everything you need to learn about that game. Either way, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys think about these 3 performances, Kayvon Britton, Adam Jones, and Scottrey Humphrey, and I will move on. Okay, I just had a quick topic I wanted to talk about real quick. Obviously, this is a player who everybody knows about. He's gotten a lot of buzz throughout this offseason. PFF rated him one of the highest rated players in the country, Marcus Wehr. I mean, go back and watch that Montana State versus New Mexico game. I did it. I talked about him in my breakdown. When they needed it the most, obviously the whole offensive line was a part of this, but when they needed it the most, they started running right behind Marcus Wehr, and he started moving people, started putting people in the dirt, started making a way for Scottrey Humphrey and Adam Jones. It was a sight to see. Marcus Wehr showed this weekend why he is one of the best offensive linemen in the country. There was a ton of people who are watching the game, who are tapped in the football, who are saying this guy is going to be a draft pick in 2025, and I echo that. Obviously, I am not a scout. Obviously, I'm not a player evaluator. I've just played the game my whole life, and I'm an analyst now, so I echo that. You watch the tape, you watch the game. Marcus Wehr is moving, guys. Marcus Wehr is a game changer. Marcus Wehr knows what he's doing. Obviously, he converted from D-line some years ago. He's a Billings Central guy. He's a dog. He's a dog. He's a great player. He makes things happen. I mean, he was dominant in week 0. He was dominant, showing he is one of the best offensive linemen in the country. He is a big reason why Montana State's run game started to click basically why it was clicking all game. Obviously, it's a cohesive effort. I don't want to look past any of the offensive linemen for Montana State, but Marcus Wehr was moving, guys. Go back and watch it if you don't believe me. The jury is still out on how well they will protect Tommy Mellott in pass coverage. Once again, go watch that if you don't believe me. Tommy Mellott was running around a lot when he dropped back to pass at times, especially later on in the game. So I think the pass protection for Montana State needs some work. And some of that's on Tommy Mellott as well. picking up some of those zero coverages. You got to notice the zero blitz. You cannot miss zero when you can't miss zero. Zero is usually very obvious when somebody's bringing a zero blitz. You got to notice it. You got to get to your hot. I don't know if that's on the offensive coordinator for not giving him answers out of zero coverage to be able to check into a hot, but somehow, some way, you got to be able to notice the hot. But there were times when it wasn't zero coverage. A lot of times it was in blitz that he was getting pressure, but sometimes it wasn't out of the blitz where he was getting pressure, and that's something that they need to work on. But when they're running the ball, they are one of the best rushing teams in the country, and that starts with their offensive line up front, and that starts with Marcus Wehr. When they're not running the ball, I think their pass protection needs work. Obviously, it was the first game. Obviously, we'll see over the course of the season. Obviously, this week where they're playing Utah Tech, I don't know if they'll get tested from that aspect this week, but we will see. Let me know what you guys think about Marcus Wehr. Obviously, if you're a fan of Big Sky football, obviously, if you're a fan of the Bobcats, you know his game is elite. But let me know in the comments, and I will move on. Okay. Last week, the Senior Bowl released its watch list and watch list players, and there's some Big Sky players on the list. I don't think there's really any surprises. There was a few surprises for me. Obviously, some of these guys I don't even know. I didn't even put their teams on here, which is a mistake by me. But I know what team most of these guys are on. I think there's only one guy I don't know what team he is on. But there's a nice amount of Big Sky players on the watch list. Now, obviously, this means that the eyes are watching. This means that the big-time scouts are watching. This gets agents' eyes popping. Everybody is watching when you get somebody on the Senior Bowl watch list. First, you got Elijah Ponder. I've talked about him a little bit this offseason. Cal Poly. Cal Poly's not a great outfit, but Elijah Ponder is somebody that stands out. I think their SID told me, I know their SID told me he's been getting 4th to 5th round draft grades from a lot of scouts throughout the offseason. There's been a ton of teams come out and look at him this offseason. He's a really good player out of Cal Poly, playing edge, most likely an edge rusher. I don't think he can go be a 3-4, probably a 3-4 linebacker or DN type player in the NFL. Ethan Chisholm at receiver for Eastern Washington. Obviously, Eastern Washington is known for putting out good receivers. Ethan Chisholm is the next in line for those guys. Abraham Williams, defensive back, punt returner. I would say, I haven't really seen him as a defensive back, but I would say most probably people are looking at him as a returner. He's a really good kick returner, really good punt returner. He transferred from Weber State, ended up at Idaho this offseason, so he's another good get for them. Junior Bergen, we know what he brings to the table. Once again, another good returner. Obviously, I think he had a really good receiving output last year. If he wants to make it to the Senior Bowl, I think he's going to have a really good season as a returner and also a really good season as a receiver. But Junior Bergen on there. Cole Grossman, the tight end who missed last season and is back this year to stake his claim as one of the best tight ends in FCS football. He's a really good player. Obviously, he's got the size. He's been in college, feels like forever, but he's a really good player. He's had 2 All-American seasons prior to missing last season, so everybody will be interested to see what he's able to do this year. You got Brody Grebe, legacy out of Montana State, defensive end. One of the best players in the Big Sky Conference, one of the best players from Montana State, one of the best pass rushers in the Big Sky Conference. Him, Elijah Ponder, Riley Wilson, 3 of the best pass rushers in the conference. He's got the size. He's got the athleticism. He's got the hustle. He cares about the game. You just turn on the film. He's always around the ball. He cares about football. And obviously, guys are going to be watching him this year. I'm sure Montana State, New Mexico game was a big game for the scouts. But, even then, you look at some of the players on that New Mexico squad, and it's like, are they much different from FCS players? I don't think they are. So that's obviously somebody that people are going to be watching. Next, Marcus Wehr. Probably, I don't want to call any of these players a lock because things happen throughout the season. Injuries happen. But if there was a lock on this list to make the Senior Bowl, out of the FCS, out of the Big Sky Conference, I would say it was Marcus Wehr. And he just echoed that during that New Mexico game. Marcus Wehr is a force to be reckoned with. He makes plays all over the field. Not all over the field. Obviously, he's on the offensive line. But he is a stalwart on that offensive line. He moves people. He's got a great base. Very physical. Good hands. You watch it. He's very technical, very nasty, very physical. Great player. Marcus Wehr. He's playing guard now. I think they had him listed at tackle, but he's playing guard. They shifted some players around on that Montana State offensive line, and Marcus Wehr is playing guard. no matter where he's at on the offensive line, he's gonna make things happen. But I think that's also something. I mean, he's probably kind of small to play tackle, but in the NFL. But I think that's something that will appeal to coaches when he's getting looked at from NFL scouts, is the fact that he's played tackle, the fact that he plays guard. I don't know if he plays center, but he's been moved around on that offensive line and he's got some versatility. Next, you got Brandon Hall, 6'9", kicker, punter, out of Montana State. Don't know much about him. I think he did a little bit of their field goal kicking last year. I don't think he's the best field goal kicker, but I think he's a damn good punter and a damn good kickoff specialist. I don't know if NFL teams will be looking at him as a kickoff specialist, obviously, because now those guys are asked to tackle to some extent. So, I mean, all kickers are going to have to learn to tackle, so it is what it is. But Brandon Hall's in there. David Hogue, who I was not familiar with until I think I saw him on the I think he was on the Shrine Bowl list. Very unfamiliar with this guy's game. Obviously, the scouts know more than I do. I am not a talent evaluator. I'm not watching a ton of University of North Carolina or Northern Colorado film, so I'm not familiar with his game, but the scouts are very familiar. If he's on the Senior Bowl watch list, obviously Jim Nagy sees something that nobody in the Big Sky Conference was seeing last year, so he's a player to watch. Dante Chachere, I'd be interested to know, because obviously Portland State's not a great team. I think Dante Chachere has a lot of skill, a great skill set. He's a very good rusher. I think he can throw the ball around there, but I don't think he gets a fair shake because his team isn't great. He's not playing with great weapons around him. And honestly, this year, I don't expect to see much out of them. Their schedule is ridiculous. I say it every week. If you haven't looked at Portland State's schedule, go look at it. It's crazy. They have Washington State this week. They have a crazy schedule, so it's hard to judge Dante Chachere, but if he can ball out against some of these FBS opponents, they play Boise and they play Washington State. If he can have good games against them, if he can play on time, if he can show that he has a really good arm, run around on them, I think that'll appeal to some of these teams. But he has to really put that Portland State team on his back this year. They have a gauntlet of a schedule. They're playing 6 or 7 2023 FCS playoff teams, so they're not going to have anything handed to them this year. It's going to be tough. Dante Chachere. So the next player on that list is going to be Tyree Shakir, defensive back out of Portland State. So Portland State had 2 players on here, Dante Chachere and Tyree Shakir. Obviously, I'm very unfamiliar with his game. I don't know if he's a transfer, a drop down, or if he was there last year. But obviously, the scouts see something on film that we must not be seeing. So, Portland State seems to have a decent roster underneath. They got a good offensive player. They got a decent defensive player. Obviously, it takes way more than that to be good. But, Portland State could shock some people. They were the second best rushing team in the conference last year. I would not sleep on Portland State when it comes to Big Sky Conference play. I definitely would sleep on them when it comes to their non-conference schedule. But even then, South Dakota, they got Weber State early on in the season. Those are going to be some early tests for them. If they're able to come out on top on those, I think we might be having a different discussion about Portland State in a couple of weeks. But Jackson Slater out of Sac State, he's on the Senior Bowl watch list. I believe he was on the Shrine Bowl watch list as well. I'm sure he's going to be on everybody's watch list. He's a beast in the weight room. He's a mauler when it comes to the offensive line. I don't know what much to expect from Sac State. They weren't great defensively last year. That was probably one of their things that hurt them. They were decent offensively, but Caden Bennett got hurt later on in the season, and, they were kind of up and down from that standpoint. They had a young freshman who looked good, but, Caden Bennett kind of tried to battle through these injuries later on in the season. So, interesting from that standpoint, but Jackson Slater, Sac State, they've won 3 Big Sky Conference championships in recent memory, 2022, 2021, and 2019. So don't sleep on Sac State. We'll see what they're able to do. And then the last player on the list is UC Davis's Lan Larison. One thing that scouts want to know when looking at an FCS player is, how does he play against FBS competition? They have Cal this week 1. Scouts are going to be keen in to see how he plays against a FBS opponent, being Cal. Cal's in the ACC now, so everybody's going to be paying attention to that game, see what he's able to do, see what he's able to put on film. That's going to be a good big barometer for teams wanting to draft him, for teams wanting to gauge how he is as a player. So Lan Larison, got to ball out, bro. I know you can do it. I know you will do it, but you got to do it. So those are the players: Elijah Ponder, Efton Chisholm, Abraham Williams, Junior Bergen, Cole Grossman, Brody Grebe, Marcus Weir, Brennan Hall, David Hogue, Dante Sachare, Tyree Shakir, Jackson Slater, and Lan Larison. What do you guys think about the Big Sky players on the Senior Bowl watch list? You guys let me know, and I will move on. Okay, I got a week 1 preview coming up for you. This will be my last topic, and then, I'll see you guys next week. Not anything crazy, but I'm glad we're finally talking about games that have been played. So my first week 1 preview is Montana versus Missouri State. The question that needs answering is, what does Montana's QB situation look like? And these are questions that'll be answered by EOD Saturday. So we'll have either an answer, or these will still be questions lingered up in the air. I think we'll have answers to most of these questions by end of day on Saturday. What does Montana's QB situation look like, and are they in a good position for the rest of the way this season? Missouri State is making their transition to FBS and is not a playoff eligible. So, they're in between FCS and FBS. I think they're still considered an FBS team right now. I don't know how all of that works, but, this game doesn't count towards much. But I'm sure Missouri State doesn't want to, start their FBS career off by losing to an FCS school. But I think they will. Obviously, that's yet to be determined. How does the defense look without Alex Gubner? Obviously, Alex Gubner, Defensive Player of the Year last year for Montana. How do they look without him? How do they look on the second level after losing all 3 senior linebackers? Obviously, they still have Riley Wilson and Ryan Terrell, but they lost Levi Janicaro, they lost Braxton Hill, and they lost Tyler Flink. 3 seniors, 3 guys with a ton of experience. That matters for something. Ryan Terrell, Riley Wilson, some of the other guys they brought in some guys from the transfer portal. They're going to have to pick up the slack, but the big question is, what does the defense look like? How does Pat Hayden compare to Alex Gubner? How do the linebackers compare to the ones that we've seen in recent memory? We will see, but that's going to be a big part of it. I think the best part of Montana's defense this year will probably be their back end, but there's a lot of questions for this team. I think people assume that this Montana team is going to be very good this year, and I don't doubt that they're going to be very good and very talented this year, but I think there's a lot of questions out there as to what they will look like week 1. And, obviously, like we saw with Montana State, I think we'll see some first game jitters with Montana, but what do they look like? We will see. Next game, Eastern Washington versus Monmouth. Monmouth lost a ton of talent. Dymere Miller transferred. Jaden Sheardon is in the NFL. Antonio Colclo is obviously in the NFL. Not in the NFL. He transferred as well. He was their best pass rusher. I think Eastern should win this game handedly, maybe by a score or 2. But what does their defense look like? This will be the test for them, and will be the test for them. That will give us answers for the rest of the season, but that's going to be the question for Eastern Washington. Obviously, offensively, I don't think they ever really struggle offensively. I think they've always been pretty up to the task when it comes to offensive football, when it comes to moving the ball down the field, when it comes to moving the ball through the air. I think they've always kind of had that settled, but what do they look like defensively? Can they tackle well? Can they get stops? Can they get their defense off the field? What do they look like up front? Can they stop the run? Those are big questions for Eastern Washington. But the biggest question is, what does their defense look like? Are they going to be better defensively? They have to be better defensively if they want to be able to compete in the Big Sky Conference. They must be. Next, we got Sac State versus San Jose State. What to expect from Sac State this year? Caden Bennett is back healthy and looking to lead his team back to another Big Sky championship. But what does the rest of their team look like? My question for Sac State is, what do they look like defensively? They had a first-team all-conference linebacker who flew around. They lost a ton of pieces defensively, honestly. But defense was a struggle for them last year. Defense was really the big struggle for them last year. Offensive, I think all around, Sac State kind of struggled. I think at times offensively, they looked like they didn't know what they were doing. I think at times defensively, they looked like they didn't know what they were doing. But with the retention of Caden Bennett and also having depth with the second-string quarterback, Conklin, their second-string, he was a freshman last year. He's going to be a sophomore this year. I think they should be decent offensively. They returned some pieces. Gibson, they lost their tight end. They lost another receiver, Carlos Hill. But they have some pieces offensively from the receiver position, from the running back position, from the quarterback position, from the offensive line position. I think offensively, Sac State should be good. Defensively is going to be a question mark for them. Can they have it? Also, another question: can they get another FBS victory this year? They beat their old head coach at Stanford last year. Their new head coach this year from last year beat their former defensive coordinator. What am I saying right now? What do they look like this year? What are they going to look like defensively this year? Can they get another FBS victory this year? Those are the questions that I have. How do those questions get answered? We will see. Next, Portland State versus Washington State. My one question: how close will Portland State keep it? And I was kind of laughing asking this question, but seriously though, like, how close does Portland State keep it? Because I think that's going to be a big sign as to what Portland State will look like this year. Obviously, we just talked about some of the pieces Portland State has, but obviously I've talked about ad nauseum about Portland State's schedule this year. It's not an easy schedule. It's not an easy schedule for anybody. Anybody would struggle with the schedule they have this year. What do they look like against Washington State? I think that'll give us a lot of answers as to what they will look like throughout the season. NAU versus Lincoln. This game will give us a gauge of what to expect from NAU. I don't think they should struggle with this opponent. NAU has been my dark horse. They were 5-3 in the Big Sky Conference last year, so really not one of the worst teams in the conference. Portland State, Cal Poly, Northern Colorado would hold that title. Idaho State, and even Eastern, and Weber. Some of the worst teams in the conference. NAU, not so much down there. They're playing an independent. Lincoln is an independent traveling team, so I don't even know what that means. Like, I tried to figure out what division they played in. I don't know if they're D3. I don't know if they're NAIA. I don't know if they're D2. I don't even know if they're FCS. It's an independent traveling team, so they travel around. They play who they can. Maybe they're trying to decide. Maybe being an independent traveling team is a way of, like, gauging where you're going to land, like, who you can compete with, play some D2 teams, play some D3 teams, play some FCS teams, see where you land at. I don't think they've had football at their school for that long. I think they started football at 2021. So what do they look like? NAU should handle them, I think. If Lincoln handles them, I think we're having a different discussion. They're a North Oakland football team, so we will see. We will see. Next, you got UC Davis and Cal. What does UC Davis look like against Cal? Cal is an ACC opponent. They were one of the worst Pac-12 teams year in and year out, but they're playing UC Davis. Obviously, I just talked about Landon Larison. I think he needs to have a good game to show scouts what he's capable of from a competitive standpoint. You know, obviously you play good against FCS opponents, but they want to see you play good against FBS opponents. So I think that's going to be a big barometer of that. But you got UC Davis and Cal. Yeah, man. What do they look like? I think UC Davis can be one of the top teams in the Big Sky Conference this year. I don't think you have to beat Cal to prove that. I think you do need to be a certain level of competitive against Cal to prove that, but we will see. You got Idaho State and Oregon State. Obviously, Giovanni McCoy, former quarterback from Idaho, is at Idaho State, so maybe he still has some of that animosity from his Idaho days to beat Idaho State. I don't think they should struggle beating Idaho State, but what does Idaho State look like defensively? Obviously, Oregon State's probably going to be a pretty decent opponent to test that against, but the front seven is going to be a big hurt for Idaho State. Oregon State's probably going to bully them up front on both sides of the ball. But defensively, what do you look like? Idaho State has usually been one of the better offensive teams too, similar to how Eastern Washington is. Usually can move the ball, usually can put points up for the most part, but their defenses are usually lackluster, not great, but they usually have great weapons on the outside. They have great weapons again on the outside this year. Christian Fredrickson being one of them. Their quarterback position, Jordan Cook, a young player who can sling it around, but had almost as many interceptions as he did touchdowns last year. So I think for Idaho State, just look clean. Just look clean. You know, I don't know. It's hard to tell with the Oregon State matchup. It's hard to tell, but you know, we will see. Northern Colorado versus Incarnate Word. I think Incarnate Word should win this game pretty handedly, but for Northern Colorado, the question is, can you keep it close? You know, I didn't even know. I found out a couple years ago that, you know, some of the coaches at Northern Colorado, when they had Ed McCaffrey, were taking off on Thursdays, you know, weren't even showing up to practice on Thursdays during the season and expecting to go out there and win games. I mean, I'm no head coach. I've never been a head coach, but I know how winning football is played, and that is not it. And I feel bad for some of those players because it seems like their coaches weren't even giving their all. But for Northern Colorado, can you keep it close? Can you win this game? I mean, this will be a big barometer to see if you've taken a step forward at all. I have a lot of friends close to me that don't think Idaho or Northern Colorado is even worth being a FCS team, not even worth being in the Big Sky Conference. So how do you disprove that? How do you show us that you deserve otherwise? Show us. Idaho at Oregon. Once again, another bad barometer. I think we should wait till week 2 to really get a good gauge of them. I think Oregon's probably going to be one of the best teams in the country this year, regardless of division. So that's tough from Idaho's standpoint. But, you know, they're on your schedule. So how do you compete against them? How do you show up? What do you guys look like? Are you guys able to operate your offense cleanly? Defensively, what do you guys look like? I think more than anything, can you guys keep it close? We played Oregon in 2019, and we lost 33-3, so we only put up 3 points. But for them only to put up 33 points, I think was really good sign of our defense. And that year, our defense ended up being pretty dang good. So, you know, how close can you keep it? That's really what it comes down to with some of these FBS opponents. How close can you keep it? Cal Poly San Diego. Cal Poly should win this. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the better games being played in the Big Sky Conference. San Diego playing in that Pioneer Conference, they haven't usually been one of the better teams. They're a non-conference. They're a non-scholarship school, so, you know, it's hard to recruit to schools like that. It's hard to get really good talent there. Cal Poly being a scholarship school, Cal Poly playing in the Big Sky Conference, I think they should win that game. I think it's going to be a closer game, but I think if Cal Poly can really roll those guys, I think that says something about Cal Poly. So that's a game that I'm interested in seeing what the outcome is. But for Cal Poly, can you win that game? In what fashion can you win that game? Can you roll them? Can you beat them by 2 to 3 touchdowns? Or is it going to be a close game? I don't think San Diego State is going to be one of the better teams in the FCS. So if you keep it close, that says something about you, but it also says something about San Diego. I think it says more about you if that game is close than it does about San Diego, but we will see. You got Montana State, Utah Tech. How many touchdowns do you beat them by, Montana State? And how clean do you look? We want to see clean football this week. Last week, obviously, you got the win, but it was a very ugly game. 2 turnovers that turned into touchdowns. Obviously, when you had to win it, you won it. Your running game was amazing. You rushed for 300-plus yards. I think you had over 200 passing yards. You did have over 200 passing yards, but it's just like, what do you look like? Can you play cleanly? Can you cut out the turnovers? Can you cut out the pressure on Tommy Malott? Can you notice the blitz and zero coverage? You got to play cleaner. You got to make it look better. It's got to look prettier than it did last week. Obviously, you want the same output, but how many touchdowns are you going to win by, and how clean does the game look? Those are my questions for Montana State. And last but not least, you got Weber State and Washington, a Big Ten opponent. I would be interested to know when the last time a Big Sky team played a Big Ten opponent. Obviously, Washington is in the Pacific Northwest, where most of the Big Sky Conference is, so that's that. But for Weber State, the question is just like the same one for Idaho. How close can you keep it? How do you guys look up front? I mean, not even how do you guys look up front, because I don't think that's a good gauge against Washington, who just played in the national championship last year. So the biggest question for Weber State is how close can you keep it? How close can you keep it? Can you keep it within 3 touchdowns? I mean, I think 4 is kind of outrageous. Or 3 to 4 touchdowns. Can you keep it within 28 points? I think that's a good barometer for an FCS team. I mean, I don't know. Can you keep it closer than that? I think Weber State could be decent this year. They have a quarterback returning, Richard Munoz. But, you know, they lost some pieces as well. They lost Abraham Williams to the transfer portal. So what do you guys look like? What does your defense look like? What does your offense look like? How clean are you guys running your offense? I mean, it's hard to judge with some of these games. Right now, Washington is a 27.5-point favorite. So, you know, take that for what it is. But we will see. We will see. We will definitely see. You guys let me know what you guys think about some of these week 1 matchups. What's your favorite matchup of the week? Who are you guys going to be paying attention to? Let me know in the comments, and we will move on. Okay, I want to thank you guys for tapping into the channel this week. I appreciate you guys so much for showing me love. I appreciate you guys for getting my subs up. I haven't posted a video in like a week. Last Tuesday was the last time I posted a video, and my subs have been going up. slowly but surely going up. I'm sure as these breakdowns start to drop some more this year, my subs will continue to go up. Please help me get to 1,400 subscribers. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button right now. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Make sure you guys leave me a comment down below. I do read the comments. I appreciate all of the comments. Make sure you guys continue to tap into the channel all year. I'm going to be bringing great content to you guys, trying to get some game day vlogs in there. Obviously, I don't think I can get a lot of game day footage of the games being played, but I can get of the pregame, postgame show. Make sure you guys come see me this weekend on the Grizzly Tailgate pregame and postgame show with Ace Sauerwein and Denny Bedard. Make sure you guys tap into Ace Sauerwein on the daily drive this year. Make sure you guys come go check out my podcast. So if you guys listen to my channel, if you guys watch my channel, that's great. If you guys want to start listening to it, it's going to be on the Big Sky Breakdown now in audio version, so you guys can listen to it as a podcast. Everybody says I love your podcast. It actually hasn't been a podcast until like the last couple of weeks. It's going to be on a part of the Big Sky Breakdown, and you guys can listen to it there. I appreciate all the love and support. Trying to find new ways to bring you guys content, trying to find new ways to get you guys break down the game, trying to find new ways to cover the game that I love, that I've played my whole life. But football season is finally here. I'll say it again. Hit the subscribe button. Make sure you guys leave me a like. Comment down below what you guys are most excited about for the football season, and I will catch you guys next time. Thank you so much.